All right. Good morning, everybody. This will be a pretty quick class. Some important stuff, but pretty quick to cover. So I think probably about 15 or so minutes here. What we're going to do is talk about spam and phishing emails. And then I think everybody got the email about some password policy stuff coming out. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that too, just at the end, just so everybody knows what's going on. And like I said, I'm going to go through this fairly quick. So if you have any questions, just hop in and stop me, and we'll go from there. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the difference between spam and phishing. In practical sense, it doesn't really matter. So as we go through this, you'll see that the way I want you to report it is the same, or the way I want you to handle it is the same. The main thing I just wanted to cover is kind of what the difference is, so that you know, so that as you're reading things or hear things, you're not confused about what the difference is. So spam is your kind of more traditional tactic that's been around. It's always unwanted. It's usually, spam tends to be selling focused. So these are the, click here to buy kind of things. This is the email version of a cold call. And then it can be malicious, or it can just be annoying, right? So people use spam to try to do things that are negative. And then a lot of spam is just people trying to sell stuff. So it can be either way. Phishing, on the other hand, definitely always malicious. Phishing is specifically trying to get usually information out of you. The reason it's called phishing is it's, in IT, we always have our acronyms and words like that. It's from fish for. So, people are fishing for information, just like you fish for fish. In this case, they're talking about people fishing for your information. Phishing emails wise, spam tends to look like spam. Phishing can sometimes look like spam, or it can be very intricate, very realistic looking emails. So the emails that look like a real email that are trying to get you, those are the phishing emails. And like I said earlier, they're always malicious. No one's really using phishing techniques to do legitimate business. These are people out here trying to do bad things, usually trying to get your data. Okay, real quick. Again, you don't need to memorize all this, but I just want to talk real quickly about the types of phishing so that you have a little bit of context about what people are doing. There are, probably 10, 15, 20 different categories, but these are the four main ways people are doing phishing attacks. The first one's called spear phishing. These are personalized attacks. So the way this works is they're going to do a little bit of research about you or your company or some sort of context to you, so that when you get the email, it seems legitimate, right? So when you get an email and it has details about, who your boss is or what's going on at the company, et cetera, then that kind of makes you think it's a legitimate email. So that's what they're doing with spear phishing. Whaling is kind of the opposite. By whaling, they mean large. So in this case, instead of trying to be specific, this is more like spam. They're just going to take a more generic email and try to send it out to as many people as possible and hope that some of the people reply to it. Farming, again, with the PH instead of the F, these are fake websites meant for data collection. So this can be within the email, but normally it takes you to a fake website. You'll click a link, you'll go to a website, Facebook, and it's not actually Facebook, but it looks just like it. And then you're entering your information, and all that information is going to them, not Facebook. So that's kind of what farming does. And then lastly, spoofing, similar to farming, but this is just the idea is that what I'm doing is I'm pretending to be somebody else. So I'll show this in an email later, but this is kind of a common where like somebody pretends to be your boss and sends you a quick email and says, hey, do this. And then you do it. Never was your boss, never what you should have done, that kind of thing. Anybody have any questions yet? And there's pretty generic stuff. Okay. Just real quick, I just wanted to talk about this to give some context to phishing. Like I said, you have spam and phishing being used interchangeably. And phishing is a more modern term, but it pretty much does go back all the way to the start of the internet. So even in the early AOL 1990s days, there was a company called eGold. It was one of the very first kind of big internet companies that, of course, like a lot of them, went out of business, but they were one of the very first big phishing attacks. So at least the very first one that we kind of know about and read about in the IT textbooks. Okay, so now let's talk about the important part. Let's start talking about how we're going to deal with this. So we're going to get into some example emails, and I can kind of talk about this stuff a little bit more when we get to that point. But here's some things that you're basically looking for to generically identify spam and phishing emails. Number one, an unfamiliar source. So that just is what it is, right? Email from somebody you don't know, etc. And then the other great indicator is just that it seems off. Something doesn't seem right. Could be the writing tone. I don't know why this is, but a lot of the writing tone in some of these emails can be kind of aggressive. It's definitely a English as a second language thing. So you can kind of see in the writing tone sometimes. You can also in the grammar, often they're just horribly misspelled, wrong words, that kind of stuff. And then same with the graphics. Sometimes they've done a very good job to look exactly like it, but there'd be something a little bit off, or sometimes they just look egregiously wrong. So we'll kind of look at some examples of that as we get a little bit farther into this. I've discussed this in Slack. I've discussed it with a few of you before. This is my test. This is how I personally handle spam, malicious email, things like that. So I just have a two-part test. One is I get this email. I'm wondering, is this spam? Is this, a bad email? One, do I know the person? Yes or no? Two, was I expecting this email? So for me, if I answer no to either of those questions and I have any concern about the email, it just gets reported or deleted immediately. The main concern, the only real strategy concern around this approach, when I tell people, is they'll go, well, what if I delete an important email from somebody? I've been getting email since I think basically email was invented, and I've been applying this rule most of that time, and I've yet to miss an important email. Important emails are always going to come from someone and generally, you may not know exactly they were going to email you in that moment, but you're expecting that correspondence, right? It's a business you work with, they're asking a question, this is normal, that kind of stuff. So I would use this rule generally. And again, what are you doing when you delete or report the email? You're deleting or reporting it. So if it's deleted, we can go undelete it. If it's reported and it's being wrong, I can go in and pull that back and unreport it and put it back in your inbox. So I don't want you to be nervous about reporting things. It's better that you report them, mistake, and then we deal with whatever that is, than you not be reporting these emails. That's very, very important. Now, let me see if I put this later in I didn't. Okay. Oh, yes, I did. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to check my presentation real quick. So I'm going to get into some examples here real quick, but before I do that, do we have any questions? Okay.
I'm sorry, I have a question. So how do you want us to report these?
Yeah, okay, I'm going to get to that. So that's what I was just about to, I'm going to show a couple of slides, and then I'm going to specifically show you how to report it. So these are a few examples that I wanted to show because they show specific things. I know many of you have seen thousands and thousands of these, so I'm not going to waste your time, showing you a bunch of spam emails, but I wanted to give you some examples of the things that I'm talking about. So this is a popular one right now. I know some of you have gotten it. I've gotten it. Brian's gotten it. So maybe everybody's gotten this one. What they're doing is they're going out here and they're sending you what looks like a password reset, an Office 365 password reset. When you go to reset it, what's going to happen is just typical, right? It's going to say, what's your old password? What do you want your new password to be? But in this case, this is sending you to these malicious people's website. So what you're doing is you're telling them what your current password is. And then at the point in which you're resetting your password, nothing is happening. They know that. They don't care. So at that point, they know your username. They know your password. They're going to hop in, and now they're in the network. So that's kind of how this whole thing works. You can tell on this one that it looks fairly legitimate to how an Office 365 email looks. The giveaway here is in the from, right? So, these emails are going to come from Microsoft, so a Microsoft.com email address, whereas this comes from e.manzano@gsrm.de. So what he's using here is a technique called masking, where right here it says automated. That's normally what you see. If he was smarter, he would have said Microsoft or something like that. But typically you just see, right, the Microsoft. But what the actual email is, that's the giveaway. We know that emonzo@grsim.de is .microsoft. He's not telling us what our password reset. So that's the giveaway for an email like this. This is another one of these password resets, but you can see here it's the giveaway is just that it's a lousy email, right? Microsoft's not going to send out an email with all this kind of trash in it, and if it is, it's them having a problem, and we're going to ignore it. Again, here another thing you can see. In the email, it's not even a Microsoft email. It's share.wsj.com. So, which is kind of a weird email address, but in any case, so this is what you're looking for. You're looking for sometimes the less obvious, which is like a wrong email address. Sometimes the incredibly obvious, which is just the email looks trashy. This is off my iPhone, so you can just kind of see it from a different perspective. I think this is the one that I showed in Slack last week before. I got this email. So appears to come from Brian. Real quick, reply to me with your cell phone number. Couple of things there, contextually, Brian's had my cell phone number for 20 years, right? So probably not asking for my cell phone number. Secondarily to that, the way it's, you can see here that Brian has used this signature block before somewhere. I've seen it before. So in this case, this is a bit of that spear phishing where they've done some research. Somebody's gotten an email from Brian, taken the time to realize this is how he uses his signature and that I work for him. And so the dead giveaway here was on the iPhone, you just click on the name and then it expands the information. And you can see it was he, blah, 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 at Gmail, right? So the Gmail is the giveaway, right? We'll BuildBlock. We're not emailing each other on Gmail accounts. Brian's certainly not. And that was how I knew to ignore this. And what I want to talk about real quick is my little story, and then we're going to go into how to report these emails. So out of that email, I want to talk about a story real quick. So in some previous lives, I was the head IT guy for a big financial firm in New York. I actually can't say who they are, but basically one of the largest in America, millions and millions of dollars being traded every day. And I got a ticket. It's kind of a very unusual ticket, but essentially the ticket was go look at this guy and see what he did. And what had happened is this gentleman, I don't know his exact role within the company, but he was on the investing side. He got an email that said essentially transfer $1 million into this account, do a wire transfer into this account, which he did. This is something that would be very normal to his job. His job is transferring money around for this company, but it came from someone that didn't work at the company and also someone he was not familiar with. But because, to him, moving $1 million around, not a big deal, doing a wire transfer, not a big deal. He does this all the day, all day, every day. He went ahead and did it. Almost immediately after hitting send, he went, wait a second. And he went back and looked and went, who is this person? And why do they want that? Well, he starts sending it up the poll. And it's just a random person, right? Someone from India sent him an email, said, hey, transfer me $1 million into this account. And he did it. And if you know anything about wire transfers, that money's gone. It's untraceable. We're not getting it back. So that's why they reached out to me, the IT guy, to try to figure out something to be done. My answer was nothing to be done here. And so my point out of that story was, you never heard that story because they decided that it was more important to just eat that $1 million and make sure that nobody knew they were so stupid to do that than to let anybody know about it and try to get the money back. So we all signed non-disclosures, and that's why I'm not telling you the company's name, et cetera, et cetera. But my point being is that, this guy is working with a financial investing firm, one of the best in the world. This guy's good at what he does, very smart guy, and he transferred $1 million. So the key to all of this, it feels very technology, but at the end of the day, this is a people problem. It's just about us paying attention, and the hackers are getting more sophisticated every day. So we have to be safer and safer every day. A big part of my job is to be paying attention to these things and putting things in place to remediate as much of this as possible. But there's always stuff that's going to get past me. In fact, probably most of it's going to get past me. So that's why it's really important that you're the fight against this, because I can only do relatively so much to stop the problem. Okay, let's talk about reporting. So luckily, we all use Outlook. So that makes things easy. Well, all 365, so that makes things easy. This used to be a fair bit more complicated back in the day, but Microsoft at this point has made it pretty simple. So from version to version to Outlook, so some of us use Mac, some of us are using a slightly older version of Outlook. This might look slightly different, but roughly this is the way it looks. And in future versions, it'll obviously look a little bit different too, but roughly be the same. So up in your top bar, I'm kind of up here in Outlook. This is not Outlook, it's PowerPoint, but up here, you're going to have this menu right here. Let me just actually open up Outlook real quick so I can just show you guys live. Let's go. So dragging in my Outlook here real quick. This is a live Outlook right here. You see this is the menu, normal menu bar at the top, and I'm talking about over here on the right side. So you have this report messages button. And as you click it, it's a drop down and you've got a few options. You go report it as junk, report it as phishing, report it as not junk, and you got options and help. Options and help, click on them if you want, but basically ignore them. Reporting as junk and reporting as phishing, you just click the button. It's going to pop up a message, you sure you want to do this? Yes. The email will get essentially deleted and reported off to Microsoft. It's not important whether you select junk or phishing. I think it's kind of confusing that they're still separating those out here. It's the same thing's going to happen essentially no matter how you report it. So just pick whichever one you think is best, send it off. More important that you pick one than you don't. Alternatively, if you get an email and it ends up in your spam folder and you're like, that's not spam, this is one place you can go to say not spam. So you can go to that message, come up here to report message, click not junk, and it will whitelist that message so that you continue to get those in the future. Now, I want to take real quick, let me just stop right there. Is anybody confused or have more questions about how to click, how to report the email? Okay. I want to talk for a minute about what's actually happening here because this is really important. So back in the day, your IT guy, me, was the person that maintained essentially your anti-spam, whatever it was you had, software, hardware, whatever it was you were doing to fight this problem. Now with Microsoft 365, which we're part of, Microsoft is now part of our IT department, and they are handling this piece for us. This is better for us because, there's roughly 30 of us. So, as we're getting spam emails and we're reporting things, we're building this database up of spam emails, things we don't want that the system will automatically block. That's essentially how this works. By doing it the way they're doing it, we're also connected to the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, however many it is, of users across the globe using 365. So whereas it's just the 30 of us reporting this email, we're now talking hundreds of thousands of people. This spam essentially gets identified much quicker, gets addressed much quicker. So that's a good thing for us. But what that means is it kind of took the tool out of my pocket a little bit. So some of you might remember that back in the day, the way to handle spam was more like contact your IT guy and he would do stuff. And that would be because he was doing stuff. Now that tool, like I said, is with Microsoft. So all the point of all this is that the tool is now in your hand. It's the report button. So when you forward me an email and ask me to report it, all I'm essentially doing is going up there and hitting that button. But it does muddle things up once you forwarded me the email. That's not as clean of a copy of like the bad email. So it's better if you report it yourself. So I just want everybody to understand that when I say to you to please report it, and I'm not trying to be lazy or not want to do it, it's just that actually is the proper mechanism for reporting this is for you to do it yourself. And then secondarily, I just wanted you to know that the reason I want you to do that is it's not just about us. It's really about the whole Microsoft community. And as we report these messages, we're collectively fighting this problem together. Okay, that pretty much covers phishing and spam and those kind of things. I'm gonna open up here real quick for any questions, and then I'm gonna talk about password policy stuff. I think Michelle had a question.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. So my question is, once we use the report message button,
Yeah.
I always wanted to directly send those types of emails to the delete folder. Would that do that automatically, or should I just make a rule to delete?
So when you report it as spam, it should essentially delete it for you. I think it might throw it in the spam folder. It might not throw it in the deleted folder, but it will remove it from your inbox. If you delete it first, the deleting doesn't do any sort of reporting or anything like that. It just deletes the email from your inbox. So the reporting part is the important part. And then at that point, if it's still in your inbox for some reason, you can manually delete it if you want to. I mean, obviously you would want to. But the important part is the reporting. Once that part's done, we've let Microsoft know. At that point, it doesn't really matter. There's no reason you'd want to keep that email, but you could if you wanted to. You can do whatever you want at that point. Does that answer your question?
Cool. Yeah, it does.
And
Thank
we
you.
can also look at your computer and just see if maybe your Outlook is doing something weird. But it should, I'm pretty sure it should remove the email when you report it.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions about spam and these kinds of things?
If you report it as non-junk, does it automatically go back to your inbox?
To be honest, the real answer is I don't remember. I haven't done that in quite a while. Jeannie just sent me a message that says yes, it does. So I'm gonna say yes, it does. It makes sense that it would, so I'm pretty sure that it does. You can also do that like 4 or 5 other places. So if you have ever done this and you're like, wait, I know a different way. There's a bunch of ways to do this. The reporting is not spam, not junk. Same with reporting as phishing. There's buttons other places you can do it too, but this is the one stop, kind of always there place and way to do it.
Where is the never block this sender option?
Yeah, so that gets into the whole other stuff. So I'm just not going to cover that today because that's not quite what we're talking about right now, but I can show you how to do that. And we can also later get into some of that stuff, but that goes into a whole menu of kind of some complex stuff. So what he's talking about is you can set, and many of you probably have, you can set all these rules for whitelisting, meaning always let it in, blacklisting or blocking. There's all these kind of things. And most of you probably already have one because as you're reporting some of this stuff, those lists start to get built. That's in the settings menu, and that just gets real complex. So we'll kind of save that for a later class. Okay, I'm going to talk about passwords real quick. So since about a year ago when I got hired, Brian and I have been talking about needing to implement a password policy. I think he said in the email, if everything going on, we're wanting to get this kind of going. So I don't have an exact date for you as to when we're going to make this a thing. It's going to be here soon. But I wanted to talk to you guys about it today so that you can just start getting ready for it, so that you can just kind of mentally be prepared. Because I know we're going from essentially no policy to a policy, so that's a big change. And so I just want to give everybody a little bit of time to get ready for this and kind of understand what it's going to be. This starts a process in a way. Now that we're kind of fixing this problem, it kind of takes us on to the next one. So my point being is this is probably not everything. We're probably going to be releasing a number of policies over the next 6 months that kind of clean up some of our IT stuff, but we're going to start here with a password policy. So essentially, first thing is we just need to be resetting our passwords every so often. So every 6 months or so, I believe is going to be the policy. That's going to affect right now. That's going to be, right, we have all these different passwords. The one I'm talking about is the one for your email that is also the same one you use to log into your computer because those are connected. We have other passwords, right? We have our Slack password and 8x8. As we move to what's called single sign-on, meaning you have one sign-on for everything, everything will get moved into that bucket. So your sign-in that you currently use for your email and computer over time will become the sign-in you use, hopefully for literally everything in BuildBlock. So you have a single sign-on to deal with. Now, the second part of that is 2auth, or most of you have seen the apps with the digits that you have to put back in. We're going to head down that road eventually too. That's kind of essentially how you fix the problem of single sign-on. So single sign-on is great, right? One password. But it sucks from an IT perspective because if someone gets your password, they have access to everything. So we fixed that with 2auth. So just kind of letting you guys know that some of that stuff is coming down the road. So you will have to change your password every 6 months, let's say, but it won't be like 4 passwords. We're going to try to get it to where it's 1 password you maintain. That's all you have to worry about. And then password requirements. We'll probably tweak these, but they're going to be the rough ones that you see at your bank or anywhere else. At least 8 digits, not a previously used password, and then a strong password, meaning some mix of upper or lower case letters, numbers, symbols, etc. Of course, once we decide exactly what that is, we'll polish that out and let everybody know. And then I just want to say real quick, Matthew's saying, is Microsoft Authenticator what I'm talking about with 2Auth? Yes, it is. So anything, there's a bunch of other authenticator apps out there. There's hundreds of them. So if you use an authenticator app for anything, basically what it goes, you open up the app and you usually get about 6 digits and then you enter it on the website and it lets you log in. That's what I'm talking about. So we'll be releasing some version of that ourselves probably sometime this year. So anyway, not a whole lot on password policy, but I just wanted you guys to know that that's coming, because I know right now you can have any sort of password you want. So you probably have a password that doesn't, well, it may meet these specs, but it's not required to. And we're certainly not doing any sort of forced password reset kind of stuff. So I know this will be a big change for us, but it's just critically important to keeping us safe. Not to get into the news and all that, but if you're paying attention to what's happening overseas right now, that started as a cyber attack. It continues to be a cyber attack. It's not really what they're talking about in the news. Russia is very sophisticated when it comes to these things, and we're just seeing more and more sophisticated attacks. And BuildBlock is the size of company where we're not, highly unlikely to be targeted. We're not big enough that anybody's really going to probably care about us and target us, but we're big enough to just get hit by a lot of the wide swath stuff because of our size, being part of Microsoft, etc. So it's just going to become more important as we move forward to do some of these things. I don't know how many of you were around for the BitLocker attack that happened some number of years ago. Those suck and they're horrible to go through. And that's what we're trying to work towards, is preventing that kind of thing from happening again. And I think the most important part to all this is, and kind of my point to this class, is to instill in you knowledge that a lot of this relies on you. It doesn't rely on me. It relies on me as an individual user, but not as the IT guy. So a lot of this spam reporting, like I said, it's becoming more individual focused, and Microsoft's moving more and more that way. So it becomes more and more important that we all work on this together. It's not something just the IT guy in a closet can be addressing. So that's kind of what we got coming up on password policy. Hopefully early next week, I should have some more information about like when we're actually going to apply the policy, what the actual rules will be, and then also some ideas around how are we going to do this, right? Like, are we going to do it in phases or on a certain day or whatever? So me and Brian will talk about all that this weekend, kind of come up with a plan, and then early next week I should be able to let everybody know what our plan is with that. Okay, guys, I've covered the spam stuff. I've covered the password stuff coming up. That's what I wanted to cover today. So at this point, I'm just going to open it up again for any questions on passwords or spam or phishing. All right, I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads, so I think we're good. There were a couple of specific questions that people had about, some stuff I said, yeah, we're not going to touch that right now. If you have those questions, just ping me and we can talk about those on an individual thing. And then as I've talked about in these classes, we just started doing these classes. So these are all kind of 101 level classes. Some of this stuff that I'm not wanting to get into, this kind of 200 level stuff, I do have those on a list. Like I know PowerPoint, we're definitely going to do a second PowerPoint class that's more advanced. I'm working on that right now. So I'm not ignoring these questions. I'm always writing them down, and we'll do classes as we get more and more advanced. But if you have specific questions to you just let me know, and I'll work with you individually to get it figured out. All right, everybody, that's going to be it for me. Have a good rest of your Friday. And like I said, if you have any technical questions, IT technical questions, you just reach out to me. Have a good Friday.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.